Um, I want to talk about, we're kind of at an interesting time. The purpose of the PAC Kid Flashback is to reconnect with folks that have been a PAC Kid to find out what they're doing now and what the PAC meant to them, why the PAC should be important to students now. But at the same time, we're in this Black Lives Matter moment as a nation. And I think I've had a few conversations with others. I think everyone's experience with dealing with racism is informed by their own experience. There's no way around that. But I've talked to other graduates from North Hardin, which is where I came from, which is where you came from. And it's been alarming to me because my experience with dealing with racism while I was a student at North Hardin, that it could be so vastly different from somebody else's. When I was at North Hardin, I was what we used to call the black hole. I was that end of the hallway where the art rooms were, where the chorus were, where the band rooms were.
Right.
And we would just bop around from room to room in that one hallway. And we kind of had our own little world over there. And we kind of all took care of each other.
Right.
It was a family. Nobody else wanted us because we were there and we took care of each other. But I also remember this overwhelming feeling that we as a school were in this together. There was what's the word I'm looking for? Because we were so close to Fort Knox and we had so many military families, I really felt like North Hardin was this melting pot.
Yeah, it was. It's incredibly diverse. It's incredibly diverse. And I don't think that I even realized how, great of an experience that was. And literally until I got into college. So I did this whole rant the other day, which, I'd step back and I was watching like literally my newsfeed blow up and my friends having conversations and they're, like upset and excited. And I like to sit back and watch everything kind of play out for a second just before you make a decision or, you're deciding on what it is. Because let's face it, like the media today, I think it's very hard as someone who tries to look at both sides to see, to make sure that you're staying neutral and looking at it with the best glasses possible. I waited a little bit to watch everything come out and I watched videos in full and it's a scary time to, kind of engage in conversation with a lot of people because you don't want to find something out about a good friend and feel like they don't understand the things that you go through, your family goes through, anybody else who is of your race and culture go through, it's a scary time because you're going to have to decide, are you my friend? Because this is not negotiable. This is not politics. This is, how you treat human beings. So I wouldn't, I started to reflect back on a lot of things throughout my entire, educational history. And I don't, I grew up on base, which was amazing because really, you don't even see color. You have people who are Latino, you have people that are Black, white, Korean, Japanese, all kinds of stuff. So it was great.
And one of my experiences at North was, for example, nobody told racist jokes.
Right.
At North Hardin. You did not go there because you might think you were talking to someone who was of one ethnicity, but because it's military families, you don't know what the mom is.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
You could not judge someone by the color of the skin as far as where they came from and how they might be offended. So you just didn't do those kind of jokes. You just didn't.
Right. And so that's literally the culture I grew up in. And I think, it's terrible, but it's when I was at JTA, I really...
Now you're talking and again, we haven't really done a good introduction. You are Brittany Froedge.
Yes.
And you are at JTA now.
Well, or no, I'm in
You're
North Middle
Middle.
now.
You're North
But
Middle now.
but I meant, like as a student, I went to
Oh, okay, as a
JSL.
student, because now
So,
you're a teacher.
yes,
That's
now I'm a
okay.
teacher. So
Sure.
it's like, this whole thing causes you to go back and think through your, educational experiences as a kid, as a student, and then really even as, a teacher now. And the biggest thing is, during that time period, I grew up in a military surrounding. And when I got there, I didn't really think about race that much. And, I realized, I think that my experiences, I had this instance where a friend got in trouble for dating. She was, Caucasian. She got in trouble for dating a black guy. And, I had a teacher that, basically told her to suck it up and do what her dad wanted. And in that, I realized that there are some people they're not overt racists, and I don't even think that they consider it racism when they're telling, their children not to date people outside of their color. And that is racism. And I don't think they realize that, but I did then. And it struck me in a different way because, I am of two races. My dad is African American and my mom is Korean. So, in that moment when this kid told me, my parents told me that if you do mix outside of your race, that, your kid will be confused of what they are. Now, I'm sitting here like, oh, I'm confused about what I am, because what I know I am is an honor student, and I am highly, talented on the piano. I made all district on my clarinet, so I feel like I know what I am. But this kid saying that, he was so convinced, like in his mind, he had learned what his parents had taught him, and that was the truth. And, I can't say that he hasn't taught his children that, because now he's my age and he has children. And is he going to pass that on? I don't know. Is he going to tell his children to follow that same suit? I don't know. So now I'm, fast forward, I'm at North Middle School as a teacher. And I can just tell you, like, with the musical side, with instrumental music, you can tell differences in what people have at home or what they deal with. And so in our instance, North Middle can be anywhere from 72 to 83% free and reduced lunch over the last 10 years. And that comes with a lot of things in itself. But then on top of that, we are very diverse compared to other programs, and again, I didn't realize that about this community until I went to college from North Hardin. And I was so, like, when I made the decision to go to UK, I was so excited. I was like, oh, I've seen the Wildcats, all the time. I see them play basketball. This is going to be great. I'm going to have a great experience, and I think I didn't even get invited to the campus tour to go to UK by North Hardin. And I don't know if that's because I really have no idea why I didn't get invited, but I didn't get to go. So my campus experience was only me going to audition on my clarinet. And I just looked around a couple, buildings and thought, this is nice. So when I went, the first day I showed up, I looked around the room and there were only, in this marching band meeting, I look around the room and there was literally me and like 4 other people of color. Mm-hmm. Like one of them was German and black, and then there were like 3 other black students, and I just didn't realize that was the student population there. Well, so I was thankful that I could come back and teach students that are from diverse cultures. Like that's a gift to me. Like, I feel like as a teacher, it opens your eyes to a lot of different things, but you also get to teach them about things they may experience. I've had a lot of young African-American males, like this past year, I had an 8th grader that I think a lot of people, judge what he wants to be in life and think that he's, just going to be another kid that, I guess chooses the wrong path. And I don't necessarily, I've never felt that way about him, because he's always been awesome to me. He's always been yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And if I talked to him about a serious conversation about, like behavior or different things like that, he was so receptive to it. But I don't, and that goes to a different conversation, which I don't know if it's because, he can relate that we're both, we're not, we're not Caucasian. I don't know if that's why he related, but I know that it was important to have those conversations with him about people's perceptions and their schema of what an African male is. and how it's terrible, but you have to prove yourself 10 times over to make sure that people see you and your potential instead of just being able to exist and people assume that you're going to be successful. Like, I think that's a huge thing that I've preached to a lot of my kids.
Do you think, and again, I'm kind of sharing my experience, I feel like a lot of those barriers can be peeled away through lack of a better word, through talent. When you're the best clarinet player, you're the best clarinet player. It doesn't have anything to do with anything else.
Right.
Your economic background, your race, your grade point average. If you're good at the clarinet, you're good at the clarinet. And I think giving all of our students, one of the phrases I heard, we work really hard as educators and education as a whole to serve the students that are floundering, that are struggling, that we can at times neglect the students that are gifted. And finding that balance, I think, is difficult. And I think that's where some of our students can sometimes fall through the cracks.
Yeah, it is really hard. It is like, I want, my goal for my program is obviously not for every student that goes through to become a professional player.
Right.
If one decides to be one, I want to know that I did the best that I could to appeal to them. But it's easier, say like at an East Oldham middle school. And there are a lot of factors that go into why I say it's easy, and I can back that up completely. But, just take, for instance, if you tell a kid, hey, you need to go buy an R13, and then they come back and they have an R13. Well, that you just bought a $3,000 instrument. That's not, not every kid's family can do that. And I think not many from my school could do
Sure.
that. So it is hard because you try to help the top students, and it's purely through instruction. You have to know your material, you have to know your content, but you also have to know how to deliver it. And I think that's hard because you have to reach that kid who, you have no idea what happened to them at home. You have no idea what happens, day to day or on the weekend, but you're trying to get them to learn, the B flat scale.
Yeah.
And it is hard because one kid may get it because they're, GT math and GT, or they may be incredibly gifted in the music area anyway. But then you may have a student over here that just needs an outlet, and then maybe things aren't so easy to understand. Maybe they have where they can't read well, or they can't take things in the book home and understand concepts. Maybe they're struggling with math. There's so many different things that can cause, someone to hinder their learning. It's hard. It's hard. Mm-hmm. But I think really it all, like I said, I try to concentrate on the scale of it by creating experiences where kids can come to me in the morning, whether they're talented or whether they're struggling, or after school. There's some kids that like to come over on Wednesdays and work after school and get help. But I mean, it's additional time, but it's definitely worth it with the student body that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. Flexibility. Yeah.
Yes. And the schedule.
Yeah. Scheduling. Oh, don't get me started. What was how, I'm not saying this how I want to say this. What did the PAC mean to you as a student, and how has that changed as an adult and as an educator now?
I think the PAC is incredible for, existing. It was built while I was here. So I grew up on Fort Knox where they did have a PAC, but it got taken down, right? And then 9/11 happened, which was terrible, but we used to go to shows and different things. It was, we were always watching, or I was at least always watching shows and watching productions on stage. And I thought it was just so cool how people are working together to create a mood or get you to feel a message or, just entertainment all around. It was great, and then when the PAC was built, we got to go to shows as well. And I just thought it was amazing. I thought I was going to be in the New York Pit. I thought I was going to be playing on Broadway, playing my little clarinet. I thought, but I mean, it really opened my eyes to what teamwork is, and putting on what's on stage. Even as an 8th grader, I got to go to a North Hardin High School concert, and Chuck Campbell was the director, and they played a piece that was commemorating 9/11, and I thought that was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just watching that. And also, you know, moving on, and as a student, when there was a concert, I think it was with Dale Warren, and we got to play also to commemorate. We played it was an Amazing Grace version. I was trying to think of what version it was, but I just remember like the feelings on stage with everybody collectively, like having these emotions is very patriotic, and you know, you're really feeling for the lives that were lost. And I don't know, I was really caught in the moment and just thinking about it. And with that performance, you know, the audience, looking out to the audience, there were people crying. And, you know, I think it was just a really emotional moment. And you figure, you know, as a student right then, how the arts can affect people and how it can bring people together. And I thought it was incredible. And the PAC does that consistently. And as a student, again, I'm thankful for it. It's a beautiful, you know, facility, but it also houses so many different things that I'm thankful now as a teacher that my students get to see so many different things, band concerts, they get to see musicals from the choir, which Beth Root, thankful for her, because she created a program where kids could aspire, like maybe band isn't their thing, but maybe they join the choir. And I see so many people who are so quiet and introverted when they were in middle school, like come out of their shell and dancing away on stage. And I mean, it continues to change, I think, the lives of a lot of students, you know? And,
you know, I think you touched on something that I think can be lost in the glamour and the arts and the emotion of things are the life skills that we're teaching. Like you said, not everyone's going to play in the pit for a Broadway show, but the life skills that you learn being part of that team effort, I think things that, you know, well, as I was saying earlier, you know, I was talking to Sean Mize, you know, those, the ability to work within a team, the responsibility, standing up for yourself, being able to express yourself, all of those things come out of those productions, and whether it's a concert or a full-blown musical, and I do think we all try very hard in the arts to catch people who fall through the cracks.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the biggest thing. Like, you want to make sure that every kid is having an outlet. Mm-hmm. You know, because sometimes they need that. They need an outlet. They need something to, you know, find themselves, to feel comfortable with themselves in whatever way, for whatever reason. You know, there are just so many different things that I think they face, like, every day at school and at home. And so they need to have their own thing. I mean, you know, it's getting them to play a role and getting them to believe in that role, but they get to step out of what they are into something else, and they get comfortable with that. And then when they do, they get comfortable with being different.
Well, and I think another side of that same coin, I think, is I think we learn, I always have said, you know, our motto is because all the world's a stage, because for me, it's through the music, the dance, the drama, the visual arts that we see created by a different culture, that we learn about that culture. And that's how we share our culture with others. And when you are doing, let's say you're doing a elementary school production of Anansi the Spider based on African folk tales. When you're playing a character from a different culture, you can't help but gain empathy.
Yes.
And an understanding of that other culture, that other person's life.
Right. Exactly. I mean, there's so many, you know, when you're talking about different aspects in different plays, there's that, the culture part of it, and culture in different ways, like, you know, even socioeconomic levels. Like, I think that is the biggest thing on Les Mis. Like, I was just bawling my eyes out. Like, the first time I watched it, I was in love with it. And I was so glad that you put that on as a production a few years ago, because I think it's so moving. Like, you know, you really think back to then and the problems that, you know, you think you have problems now. Like, back in the day when you got to pull some teeth, like, and someone pays you for them, create a, I guess a set of dentures. But, when you're talking about that kind of desperation because of the financial issues that you face, that's something. And, and then losing life over it, and the people that thought that they were fighting for something, it echoes a lot of things today.
And here we are. It's important to fight for something.
It is. That's what that's the thing that I think it was really highlighting too in there, is that you're talking about someone who was asking, dear Marius, like, what your background is. Maybe you're not facing the things we're facing, but are you going to stand up? That's what friends were asking. And
stand with me.
It is what is going on today. And I think that's so interesting. You can just find different parallels all over the place about, the story of that Les Mis and what's going on now. And you just plug in the different social issues, and here we are.
And that's why that story stands the test of time.
Yes. Yeah. And it will.
Yeah.
But it, like right now, like I said, it's such unrest. Like, I try to be careful about what I plant, because I want my students to have an open mind, and I want them to realize, what is right and wrong is different in perspective for some people, because the way that they were raised, or maybe, they're sheltered and they've never been in a situation where maybe, the things that are going on is happening just because someone is raised the wrong way. I don't know. When you're looking at what happened to George Floyd, how was that police officer raised? Probably in a household of hate. I don't know. But, not that that's an excuse for any behavior, but for some people, they just don't look at it that way. Like, why would someone act that way? I have no idea. Not that it justifies it at all, but I can't classify every police officer as being raised in a home like that. I can't.
Right.
I've got friends that are part of the police force, and, I was talking to someone who's a Louisville police officer the other day, and he is such a great guy. I love his children, and he's, I've known him for years now, right? And we always get together on Memorial Day with other friends, and a former principal, and, he's great. He's a great guy. And talking to him last week, he was just, his whole aura about him was, pretty depressing. Like, and rightfully so. He just said, every day, I was like, Eddie, like, I don't feel that way. Like, you got to understand, like, I know you're doing your job and you're not a bad person. And he said, well, I'm glad you feel that way, but that's not what everybody feels. And I can't even walk out of my house with a police officer uniform. And at this point, he doesn't want to be a part of the force anymore. And so in my head, I'm thinking, I don't want to lose people like him. Like, he does a great job. He wants to help the world. If you called him right now, he doesn't even know you. He would come help you. And there are a lot of people out there that I think it's just, there's got to be a way to progress without so much hate involved. You know what I mean? Like, we have to be able to seek justice and go about it in a way like, vote the people in that we need to vote in. We've got to do that so that we know that we're putting people in power that can help. And that's the biggest thing, because that's the thing that's going to change it for my students. And I keep preaching that to all my former students right now, because, some of them may be a little bit apathetic about voting, but I don't think they will now, because I want them to go out and make a difference. Like, this is the best way to make a difference, is to make sure that social injustices are called out, but also that we're getting people that want to make those changes as well in the justice system, in our if you're just looking at the police force here, like making sure that we're getting the correct care, that we're having policies that aren't anything that's discriminatory towards any race, because anybody, can face it. So there are so many things that I hope, happen. But I think the biggest thing is, teaching kids that are from different cultures and are so diverse, they've got to step up so that we can make sure that, equality is happening. And the only way to do that is to get the younger generation to really, really force the issue and step up and vote. And that's really what it is. My focus is right now, because that's what I can help with,
If you want change, you have to be the vehicle of change. You have to be part of what makes it happen. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I'm not convinced of a lot of things, even in Louisville, that city is going to continue to be in unrest if, they have people who can't sympathize or empathize with what happened or what could happen, and want to truly change the outlook of why that happened. You know, for me, there could be officers arrested, but for me, the biggest indicator that there's an issue is from more of the top, you know, and until that changes and until people are in place to make that change, you know, we're going to have this strife in our society. So I hope my kids really learn from me, like, that your voice matters and that you've got to be an advocate for yourself always, no matter what situation. And I tried to do that no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's their English class and they feel like they're being, you know, someone's discriminating against them, which may or may not be true. I don't know. But I said, you know, you've got to be clear. Whether, if you can't do it vocally, write it down. I said, write a letter. Mm-hmm. You got to do something and step up for yourself. Because if someone isn't aware, maybe they're not aware of their biases, you are making them aware. Maybe you make an impression that it's for the next kid or the next kid after, of how they feel, you know, when they, you know, they feel attacked. I feel bad.
Yeah.
So.
Is there anything else you'd like to throw in about the PAC or about teaching music or anything?
I mean, teaching in Hardin County for the last 10 years has been a great experience for me. Just because I you know, I was naive coming in as 21-year-old right off the bat. And, you know, there were so many things. I know one thing coming in is that I always had this belief it doesn't matter what you are, who you are, where you come from, what your background is, you can do anything. And I think that I'm kind of grateful for that naiveness, I guess, but because going in, there wasn't anything that I thought someone was incapable of, like, completely. I just thought if you put your mind to it, you can do it. And I used to really make my brother wear a bracelet that said failure is not an option, because it's just, you know, I was just that hardcore about it, because I wanted them, like if you have that ingrained in your head, it doesn't matter the adversity you face, you will refuse to accept anything else. And I think, you know, I hope that a lot of students took that with them. But I am grateful because I know a lot of teachers that don't get to teach kids from a diverse background. And I think it's hard for them to relate to social issues of today because they can't, it's not tangible to them. Mm-hmm. It's not something that they can understand or wrap around. And they can have theories about it through what the news provides, but they haven't seen it in action. So, you know, it's harder. It's harder to, you know, have empathy or, you know, like, be empathetic about a situation or a social issue if you don't teach from that area or know kids or know people or friends. Mm-hmm. It's hard. So I'm very thankful for my time with Hardin County that I was able to teach on the north end and really help those students see the world.
Yeah.
And hopefully get out there and take no prisoners in it. Really is.
Thank you, Brittany.
No problem. Well, you take care, Bart.